At 2:14 a.m. on June 29, 1999, a silent system alert appeared on a terminal inside NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. The alert wasn't marked urgent, it wasn't marked critical, it was marked impossible. An external connection had been logged, a successful remote login from an IP address that traced to residential Florida. The engineers stared at the screen, because this wasn't a public-facing server. This was internal infrastructure, the system that developed rocket engines, communication networks for the International Space Station, code that controlled life support in orbit, and it had just been accessed by someone who shouldn't exist. Somewhere in Pinecrest, Florida, a 15-year-old sat bathed in monitor light, unaware he had triggered a federal manhunt. His screen name was Comrade. His real name was Jonathan James, and he had just done what hostile governments dream of accomplishing. National space agencies do not operate like normal organizations. Their systems exist in segmented environments, multiple authentication layers, contractor networks separated from military interfaces, operational zones designed to be unreachable from the outside world. The satellites they coordinate don't just collect weather data, they assist military navigation. They support intelligence operations. They maintain systems astronauts depend on to stay alive. Unauthorized access isn't treated as intrusion, it's treated as espionage. So when engineers at Marshall traced the breach, the first assumption wasn't a curious teenager. It was a hostile foreign operation, because 15-year-olds don't hack NASA, except this one did. Jonathan Joseph James was born December 12, 1983, in Pinecrest, Florida, a quiet suburban village, population 18,000, the kind of place where nothing happens. By age 6, Jonathan was spending hours on the family computer, not playing games, studying how they worked. His parents installed parental controls. Jonathan bypassed them within hours. Teachers described him as withdrawn, easily bored, mentally absent. But when something captured his attention, time stopped. By his early teens, he was reading books on C programming and Unix systems, the precursors to Linux and Mac OS. He wasn't learning to use computers, he was learning to control them, how operating systems communicated, how permissions were inherited, how machines trusted other machines, and most dangerously, how that trust could be exploited. One afternoon, without asking permission, Jonathan uninstalled Windows from the family PC and installed Linux. His computer time led to constant arguments with his parents. Eventually, they confiscated his equipment. Jonathan ran away from home. He refused to return until they gave it back. Soon, it wouldn't be his parents trying to keep him away from computers. It would be the United States government. By the summer of 1999, Jonathan had evolved from a curious student to a skilled penetration tester. Online, he went by Comrade. He wasn't interested in destruction, he was interested in the challenge. The thrill wasn't stealing data, it was proving the system could be beaten. He would breach a network, document the vulnerabilities, then send polite emails to system administrators. Your setup has holes, here's where, here's how to fix it. But in late August, while scanning for vulnerable servers, Jonathan discovered something unusual. A server in Dulles, Virginia, running with a backdoor already installed, left wide open by someone else's mistake. He couldn't resist. Jonathan installed a packet sniffer, software that captures network traffic like a wiretap on a phone line. Then he sat back and watched the data flow. Thousands of internal messages, usernames, passwords, credentials for systems he didn't recognize. Then he saw the naming conventions. DTRA, Defense Threat Reduction Agency, the division of the US Department of Defense responsible for analyzing threats from nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. Between August and October 1999, Jonathan intercepted over 3,300 messages from Pentagon employees. He collected credentials that gave him access to at least 10 military computers. He didn't attack anything. He observed. But observation inside classified infrastructure is never invisible. he installed malware, escalated his privileges, pivoted to 13 other computers on the compromised network. The network belonged to NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. This wasn't a public relations department. This was the facility that developed advanced rocket engines, created communication systems for the International Space Station, and stored source code that controlled critical life support, temperature, and humidity in the modules where astronauts live. Jonathan downloaded proprietary software valued at $1.7 million. Possessing ISS source code wasn't the same as controlling it. Still, this was a catastrophic security breach. When NASA discovered the intrusion, they shut down systems for 3 weeks. The damage, $41,000 in contractor labor and equipment replacement. But the real damage was psychological. A teenager had waltzed into America's space program. January 26, 2000. Jonathan turned 16 the month before. He woke to his mother's voice. "Jonathan, honey, the FBI is at the door." Federal agents from the Department of Defense, NASA, and local police raided the family home. They seized 5 computers, his Palm Pilot, CDs, and bizarrely, his Star Trek book. Jonathan didn't resist. He admitted everything, promised he'd never do it again. Then, silence. 3 months of nothing. Then, formal charges. Jonathan James became the first juvenile ever convicted of violating federal cybercrime laws in the United States. Had he been an adult, legal experts estimated 10 years minimum behind bars. But he was still a minor. The U.S. District Court in Miami sentenced him to 7 months house arrest, probation until age 18, a ban on recreational computer use, and letters of apology to NASA and the Department of Defense. Later, Jonathan tested positive for drugs, a probation violation. He was sent to a juvenile detention facility in Alabama for 6 months. May 7th, 2008. Jonathan was 24 years old, no college degree, no job. His mother had died of breast cancer 6 years earlier. He still lived in the family home with his brother. He suffered from depression. He had retired from hacking. Then the Secret Service came. They raided his house, his brother's house, his girlfriend's apartment. The reason, Albert Gonzalez. Gonzalez had orchestrated the largest identity theft case in US history, stealing data from over 170 million credit and debit cards from companies like TJX, OfficeMax, Barnes & Noble, and Dave & Buster's. Total damages, roughly $400 million. Gonzalez had been working as a Secret Service informant since 2003, while simultaneously committing the crimes he was supposed to help stop. And in the criminal complaint, there was mention of an unindicted co-conspirator, identified only as JJ, Jonathan's initials. During the raid, agents found a legally owned firearm in Jonathan's home. They didn't confiscate it. They also found old suicide notes. They didn't offer psychological help. For nearly 2 weeks, Jonathan tried to understand why he'd been targeted. Then, on May 18, 2008, the federal indictment against Albert Gonzalez was posted online. Gonzalez had been working for the feds since 2003. In Jonathan's mind, the picture became clear. Gonzalez would offer up Christopher Scott, his friend and fellow hacker, to save himself. And Scott would offer up someone even more valuable, Jonathan James. Jonathan grabbed a pen and wrote a letter. He titled it Storytime. He wrote passwords to his PayPal and MySpace accounts. Then he wrote, "I honestly had nothing to do with TJX. I have no faith in the justice system. Perhaps my actions today and this letter will send a stronger message to the public. Either way, I have lost control over this situation, and this is my only way to regain control." Remember, it's not whether you win or lose, it's whether I win or lose. And sitting in jail for 20, 10, or even 5 years for a crime I didn't commit is not me winning. I die free. Jonathan James picked up the firearm the Secret Service had left behind. He sat in the corner of his bathroom and pulled the trigger. March 25, 2010, Albert Gonzalez was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. In his parents' backyard, agents found a barrel containing $1.22 million in cash. Christopher Scott received 7 years. The mysterious JJ in the criminal complaint? Likely not Jonathan James. Probably Stephen Watt, another hacker who used the alias Jim Jones. At the time of his death, Jonathan had not been arrested, charged, tried, or sentenced for the TJX case. He was never going to be prosecuted. His fear was unfounded, but his fear killed him anyway. Today, governments actively recruit teenagers with Jonathan's abilities. Entire divisions exist to identify young technical talent, to guide it, to weaponize it. But the systems themselves? Still built by humans, still maintained by contractors, still dependent on trust relationships that can be misunderstood. Somewhere right now, someone young is staring at a screen, and somewhere else, a satellite is waiting for its next instruction.